Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you will be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne from Generation to Generation, and our guest today is Burt Watson. Now, Burt, for people that don't know who you are, can you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
Well, right now I'm sitting in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love here in the USA. And I have been involved in combat sports now I got to tell them how old I am as well, I guess. I've been involved in combat sports for over 40 years. I started in combat sports working with Smoking Joe Frazer. I started working with him. My first fight, my first boxing was in March 8th of 1971. Now, at the time, that to me was a fight. It was a boxing event, but it went on in history to become one of the greatest fights in the history of boxing between two of the greatest boxers that ever lived, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazer. And at that time, Joe and I were just friends. And we maintained that friendship along the years, and I stayed friends and, ended up working with him and managing him after his last pro fight, and then stayed with him, worked within the gym. And Joe had a large family. Joe had maybe 10 kids, 7 boys, 3 girls, and all of the boys were fighters. All of the nephews were fighters. All of the cousins were fighters. So him having a gym, the gym was full, but with relatives more so than other people coming around. But as we went along, he got other famous boxers in as time went on. But I ended up coordinating the events and working the events and coordinating schedules and creating situations for them to get television deals and creating venues and setting up workout rooms and rings and all those things, equipment. That turned into a business for me. It turned into a real profession. And I did that. And as I did that with Joe, I kind of started to branch out a little bit to the television networks. USA Today, ESPN, Showtime, HBO, Spike TV. And they started to notice, and they started also using me and recommending me to other coordinators or other promoters that were coordinating events on television. I became the guy to turn to. So I did that in boxing from Joe Frazer, I transitioned on up to the last boxers that I worked with. And the last boxing event was Layla Ali and the Klitschko brothers. So I went from Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazer to Muhammad Ali's daughter and Joe Frazer's daughter fighting each other.
Wow, that's crazy.
In that time frame, I worked with, during that time frame, I coordinated events for any boxer you could name off the tip of your tongue, except for Lennox Lewis. Any one of them. Mike Tyson, Oscar De La Hoya, Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Hector Camacho, Julio Cesar Chavez, you name them. I've worked somehow in an event for those guys. Kostya Tszyu, Zab Judah. As I did that, I learned the business and developed the business and developed Burt Watson as a person and a character, because I truly became a character. And back in 1999, I got an opportunity to meet. I was doing a boxing event in Las Vegas, and don't quote me on that. I think it was Kostya Tszyu and Zab Judah or one of the De La Hoya fights. But the promoter came to me and said, "Listen, I got somebody I need you to meet who's getting ready to do this organization, but he needs a coordinator. He needs a Burt Watson." And I I didn't know who the guy was. And I just said, you pay me, respect me, you got me. Plain and simple. So he brought the guy in and we had a conversation, and the guy was Dana White. And I had a conversation with Dana, had no idea who he was or what he was doing, or, I knew of Bruce Lee.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of Bruce Leroy, but I had no idea of karate and jiu-jitsu, and I knew of it, but didn't know what it was. But that person was Dana White, who was starting an MMA organization, which at the time was the Ultimate Fighting Championship, which became UFC. I did my first show with Dana, I think in 2000, 2001, and I did every event from 2000 to 2015 with the UFC. And that's from Chuck Liddell to Randy Couture to the Ultimate Fighter, from the time they started on Spike TV to the time they went to Fox, and then now they're on ESPN. But I've been in MMA since 1999 on up to now that I'm with Bellator. And still doing the same thing as a coordinator, putting and creating situations to give the fighter a comfort level that they are there not only to perform and to get their butt whooped. And I'm being nice, Mom, because you're present, so I'm using nice words. I'm not using naughty words. So that they don't just get their butt whooped and get out of there. And during the course of that time, I also developed, I'm a very animated person. And I know what the fighters need to get from home to the venue, to in the cage or the boxing ring, back to the venue and back home. I know what it takes to do that. And not because I read it in a book, because I've lived it so long. So my thing is the fighters and their comfort level. So I've learned to motivate them. I've learned to yell at them. I've learned to scream at them. I've learned to move them and push them in my own way. And during the course of that, I came up with maybe 101 catchy phrases that I use with fighters. Your night, your fight, you need to get it right. Ain't but two, him and you, go get it done, son. And when I go to bingo, and there's a story on that, we rolling. And I do that good and loud. And that is, I learned over the course of the time that fighters, when they show up, they don't know that everybody there cares. They don't know that you are concerned about not only them just getting in the ring, but their welfare, and that they got the right training facilities, the rooms are warm, the mats are clean, those things. Then fight night, when you get in the dressing room, you need to know what's going on. You don't need to just sit there and don't know when to put your gloves on, when to get taped up, or when you walk into that cage. I made it a point to be that person that when you were an hour and a half away from the fight starting, you were going to hear Burt Watson from the time it started to the time you walked out of that arena. And it was going to be in your ear so loud, you were going to hear it when you got back to your hotel room, okay? Because I was yelling it good and loud. And I used to run up and down the hallways, in and out of every dressing room. And I made in my mind one day, because I'm getting a little older, and I got older, and these legs started holding out on me. I'd go to bed at night and my feet would swell up. I said, you know what? I am not running in and out of those dressing rooms anymore. From now on, I'm going to speak loud enough for them to hear me. And that's when I went in that dressing room and, time to fight. It's time to go to work. Time to go to work. We rolling! Yeah! But much louder than that, Mom. I made good and loud. And you know what? Go ahead.
Now I know why every morning Andrew runs around the house saying, "We're rolling," and we're all out of bed and we're all downstairs and we're on cue. Now I know where it came from.
Yes, ma'am. We rolling. Yeah. And that gives them.
I would watch the UFC, and obviously everyone watches it to see the fights and all that kind of stuff. But for me, a big part of the build-up was the attraction of Burt Watson and the entertainment value that you provided yourself. And it was not the main thing. It wasn't the front of the platform, so to speak, but behind every piece, connecting each part of the journey, there was a Burt Watson standing there. And I used to love to watch your work. Even the fighters might be on the stage weighing in, talking, doing whatever, but there you would be right there on the stage, and I'd be keeping my eye on you, seeing like what you were doing,
what I was doing, how I interacted.
Yeah, so you were as much a part for me of that entertainment as the fighters and anyone else who was a part of that journey. So I used to very much appreciate that, which is, people don't know, but we met because you and my mum ended up sitting next together on a flight, and then I met you at the fights. You were kind enough to provide some tickets for us, and so yeah, when Mum told me she was sitting next to you, I was like, "You've got to be kidding! This is unbelievable."
But the thing is, I'm really sitting here really disappointed, actually. But I must admit it. You've gone through all the highlights in your life, and you never mentioned sitting next to me on the plane. But I'll get over it. Don't worry.
Well, you know what, Ma?
What?
It was, you were, and I'm not just stroking you now, okay? I'm not just buttering you up, but you were very, very soft-spoken, and I could tell you were a mom because your son came up right away, and your conversation was soothing. So I didn't want to talk business, okay? I was just interested in listening and just having just a general, because we had just a general conversation, and we were talking about, and I knew about Andrew and some of the things he was doing, and where you were coming on the plane, and who you were going to meet. It was so, for me, that was a comfort. That was a comfort level to just sit there and just talk, and not, because when I get to talking about my business and what I do, I might have started yelling, "We rolling" on that plane. You might have been hijacked again. Okay. So that's what I did. But it became such a part of what I do, and still is, still today. Because right now, I with Bellator MMA, same. In fact, I think that Scott Coker, who is the president of Bellator, he and I always kept communications, because I always managed to keep communications with everybody you touch. I always felt that, everybody you touch you touch it with this hand and keep them in this one. Anything anybody ever said to me was never, ever irrelevant. You can hear everything, but you got to listen to all of it, because nothing anybody says is irrelevant. So I made it a point to always do that and keep people. And I kept Scott. And one day I just picked up the phone to call him to see how he was. And he said to me, "Burt, what are you doing these days?" I said, "Well, I'm in between whatever's going on, and with the world today, everybody's sitting home. I'm doing like everybody else." And he said, "What would it take to have you come to one of our events and give us a little bit of Burt Watson?" So I'm saying, but you know what? That might take more than one event. Because I was saying, if I'm going to get out of this chair to go back to work, I'm going to get out of this chair for more than one event. Okay?
And I don't think you can get a little bit of Burt. I think you just get a whole lot of it.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, you know what he said? He said that's what we were looking for. So he wanted me to bring the funk. So I brought it. And it's funny, and it's been a thrill, because I get to see. I've done 4 events for them now, or 5, and I've seen more people that I've raised through the UFC from fighters to now they're trainers and now they're dads and family men, and none of them forget, you know, and it's amazing to see them, and I'm still rolling, and I'm still yelling.
That's so fitting with your nickname, talking about raising so many of these fighters. One of your nicknames is being a babysitter to the stars, and so you've been a part of so many of their journeys, from just when they're just trying to break in to some of them now being superstars, known all over the world. Can we just go back in time in your journey?
Yes.
You were, we were talking before we were recording, you were a Marine. Can you talk a bit about some of your upbringing? What led you to join the military and head into the Marines as well?
Well, I was born in the South. My father's Jamaican and my mother's from Charleston, South Carolina, and they met. And we moved to Philadelphia in 1950, 51 or something like that. And my family unit was always very, very strong, you know, and my mother was a disciplinarian. You know, my mother did it all. She disciplined us. She did what you could do back in the day, that if you did it today, you'd go to jail. Okay? Because if you didn't listen back in the day, you got popped. You do that today, you go to jail. But she disciplined us. You know, we were taught to, when you got out of bed in the morning, you did not leave your room unless that bed was made. When you took your clothes off at night, I see Mom looking at you.
Oh,
Said that, and I saw Mom look over like this.
Look, eyes forward, okay?
But no, you did not. When you got out of bed and pulled your covers up and made the bed. When you took your clothes off, you folded it up. So, and when you sat to the table to eat, you ate what was on your plate, and if nothing was on it, you pretend you had something on it. But you did not leave anything on that plate. You washed dishes, you cleaned house. So I grew up in a regimented situation, but a loving situation. Mm. And everybody from my family, being from the South, anyone that moved to the East came to my house first. So at any given time, we had as many as 17 people in a 2-bedroom house. In, out, in, out. So I got that and went through high school. And when I got out of high school, my mom said, I don't know where you're going, but you're going to college somewhere. And now, mind you, I'm in Philadelphia. I went to college in Nebraska, which is, I'm a city kid, I'm a hood rat, and I ended up on a farm in Nebraska, which was culture shock. But that's where I went to college in Nebraska. I did 3.5 years in a little small college, got out and ended up in the Marine Corps. And there again was that discipline, that stuff that my mom gave me. I had to make up my bed. I had to shine the shoes, you know, your boots and your weapon so it never left. It never changed. So when they started yelling and screaming, everybody else was doing this, man, I was rolling. Cause
you were ahead of the game.
That was, you know, the only thing I didn't look at him because he didn't look like my mom. Okay. But other than that, the military. So, and I went through that. And I won't say ease, because it was during the Vietnam era. And I was a communications specialist and carried a radio, a Prick 25. And I did, it was a PRC 25. And I did, you know, communications. But I went in that and I went through the ranks. I came out as a sergeant. But that discipline, and that home training and love of family was so instilled, so ingrained, that when I came out and I went into the business world, because I went into corporate structure first, man, I was set. I was shoes shine, belt buckle shine, clothing nicely aligned, still made up my bed. In fact, I learned how to make it up better, okay? Because the military taught you to make it up and drop a quarter on it. So that stuck with me, and it stayed with me as I went through college, through the Marines, and in my time in New York. Believe it, I had no intentions of sports or combat sports. Even though when I went to college, I ran track. I was the fastest person. I was the fastest athlete in my school, but I was also 5'3", and I weighed about 110 pounds. So they couldn't do nothing with that, okay, except put me on a track field and let me run track. But nothing in my genes or my athletic prowess said combat sports. So when I got out and got out of college and moved to New York, Manhattan, I went to fashion school. I went to school to learn to become a dressmaker. So I know about pattern making and grading, and I know how to sew. That's something I've never told anybody, okay?
Oh, wow. We won't tell a soul.
Okay.
No.
I trust you, Mom.
No. I mean, this only goes out across the world, but believe me, we won't tell anyone.
We'll keep this one on the down low.
Yeah.
Well, I went to a school for fashion designing and grading and pattern making and, sewing and stitching and, making men's suits. And then I sold fabrics in the garment district to manufacturers of men's suits. And that's what I was doing. I was in fashion. And accidentally, mind you, ran into Joe Frazer in New York on the street.
Wow.
Strictly by accident. And there was a car accident on 42nd and 5th Avenue. And the accident stopped all the traffic, so the traffic couldn't move. As his automobile has stopped, I'm walking down the street, and the traffic stopped, and he got out of the car. And I looked at him, and I recognized him, but didn't really recognize him. Being the person that I am with the military and all the other stuff, I walked over to him, and I said, "Hey." He said, "Hey." I said, "Are you Joe Frazer?" He said, "Yep." He said, "Today I am." That, we talked, communicated, and never lost communication since then. And started becoming friends. I went to the fight and we stayed friends. I didn't get close because at that time, he was really becoming a huge star. So the people around him kept everybody else away.
Yeah.
You couldn't get in that circle. They didn't want you messing with their money, okay? Because another person was another division of that money, and they didn't want that. But we stayed friends, and I went from friend to manager and on and to the gym and on and on and on and to MMA to today. But it's always been instilled, that whole military structure, coordinating things and putting things in order and, not necessarily telling people what to do.
Yeah.
Because when you work with a lot of fighters, people who can fight, you also got to learn how to talk to them. Okay.
One of the things that I really respect is authenticity. When somebody is authentic. And you said, I knew what they needed because I had lived it.
Yes.
And I thought, that is the mark of authenticity. I have lived it. I know what you need. And I think very often that is lacking. People leap into somewhere and they have never lived it, and it shows. So I just wanted to really appreciate it because I think that's a very profound statement.
and not only do they leap into it and not, but they don't know. They don't. And if I can tell you a quick story.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna mention names because I'm old enough to don't care. Okay. But I did a show in California, and it was a Don King Promotions, and the fighter had a manager. Now I don't know who the manager was, but it was I had got hired to do the show at the Don King Promotion. So back in the day, fighters were fighting for between $30 and $50 a round, if you can imagine that. $30 a round. So if you got a 4-round fight, you either got $100 or $200. If you had a 6-round fight, you got $180 or you got $300.
Has it gone up a bit since then?
I think Floyd just made $120 million for running his mouth. $30 a round, and that was legitimate. So this young man was fighting a 4-round fight, and he got finished, and he lost the fight, but he won the fight. But he got a decision because the guy he fought was from that hometown, so he lost the hometown decision. And this poor kid was beat up, and he was lucky because he was on the $50 range. So this was a big promotion. So he was getting $50 a round. He was getting $400. So, I'm sorry, $200. So the guy came to me and he said he was going to get his money. He went over to get his money. They gave him his $200 for the fight. He had to get medicals. His medicals was $80, and they took his medical. They took that money out of that $200. So that kid had $120. And he said he came to me almost in tears, and he said, "Mr. Burt," he said, "how am I going to get home? You know, I come all this way and I fight, and I only get $120. Now, he wasn't mad because he knew he was only going to get 50, but he didn't know they were going to take that 80 because at that time, that $80 was enough to get a bus ride for him, his wife, his kids, and everybody back then. Man, he was busted. And so I went to his manager and promoter, and I said, you know, this kid is complaining. They said, send him home. He's finished his fight. It's all over with. The hell with it. Just like that. And that kid had $120. And I said to him, I told him what they said, and this kid he was pissed. He was going to get his money from somebody. So I ran in my pocket. I had $110. And I gave that kid that $100 bill it was 2 50s and a 10. Back then you hardly had a $100 bill unless you stole it. I gave him the 2 50s and a 10. And I told the kid, I said, you know what? Next time they call you for a fight, have them put it on paper and make sure you get it right. From that point, I made the conscientious decision and a harsh decision that I would never, ever let anybody F with a fighter like that ever, ever again. So from that point on, I really became Babysitter to the Stars because it was nothing more important to me than the fighter, his needs, what he got, where he got it, how he got it, and that he got it. And that's what I did for them. 100%.
How do you juggle, or has this been a tension for you, working with promotions who obviously have their, they obviously want things to be in their favor and all that kind of stuff, but yet at the same time trying to look out for the fighters who are kind of on the opposite side of that? Has that been a tension for you, trying to look out for the fighters but yet working for promotions?
it has been easy for me, Kirk, because I came in as an independent contractor. That meant you hired me, you hired what I brought to the table. You hired me for what I did and how I did it. You didn't hire me to come in and work for your company and be a part of it. And that was the only way I was able to buck that system, because as an independent contractor, and I always said, doing a promotion is, you give 100%. 10% of that is know-how, another 10% of it is hard work, and 80% is headaches. And you hire me, I take 85% of everything. But you gotta let me do what I do. I said earlier, pay me, respect me, you got me. You gotta let me do what I do. So you have to let me control that if you want the best out of these guys behind me. So I was, knock on wood, lucky enough that I went in with that attitude and no one ever disrespected that and let me do that. So, they just dropped me in and moved out of the way. So I was able to do that. Now, I never negotiated anything for fighters, but I would tell them, before you come to me, make sure your money is right. Before you get on a plane, you make sure your money is right. Not just when you hang up a phone and it's a deal, a done deal. Paperwork, sign, make sure if you want that 5 to be a 5, it's a 5 and not a 3. Just things like that. And you know what? I didn't say anything that was against any promoters or anything. I just told the fighters what I felt, and I told them I would always take care of them. And I left them with that word. When they came to me, I had them. And I did everything during the course of the week to put things in line for them, because I'm gonna tell you, I've been in I've never did martial arts in a cage, but I've boxed and I've been in the ring, and I know that's no joke. And I know that when those guys walk behind me, first of all, when they're walking behind me, they trust me. They feel secure because they know I'm taking them to the right place. And when I take them to that place and I let them go and they get in that cage, can I curse or not? But I take them to that, I take them to that cage and I let them go. Boy, that's an ASS coming. And I know that. So everything I do to get them there, I make sure that it's 100% in favor of, so that this is 100% in favor of what they're about to do. Because if it's not, and fighters, they got ticks. They all got ticks. Okay? Somebody don't like the way somebody smells. Somebody don't like the shoes somebody's got on. He don't like the people in his dressing room. He don't like the heat in his workout room. One person wants green mats. The other one wants red. One wants wash towels. The other one wants a bath towel. They all got ticks. And I know every one of them. I don't satisfy every one of them, but when it comes to me, I know it's a tick. and I know how to handle it.
And I think that when you see people talking about you, the clips on YouTube, things like that, there are so many people that speak in glowing terms about you. I think that says a lot about the fact that they know that you're there to care and look after them and do your best. You may not always be able to deliver everything they want, but they know that you're trying to do what you can in order to put them in the best condition, best state of mind in order to deliver on what they have to do. I don't know that you can get much more or better compliments than that, than to have fighters saying how much they appreciate the work that you do. But
you said they trust me, they respect me. That isn't given, that is earned. You can't, a person can't walk in a room and say, trust me, respect me, from nowhere, because that doesn't come. And it's quite right. We shouldn't trust everybody. And sadly, we can't respect everybody. But when I listen and I hear through your life and behind what you do, I hear something that I think is sadly lacking focus these days, and that's character. And I hear all the way your mother instilled it in you, it kept it in you, but you had to own that. Yeah, but you still had to own it. You could have rebelled against it. You could have gone in the other direction, but you did it. And so, I think, as I'm looking on as someone who has a son who watched you and who tracked with you, and you are a role model. You are a role model for many. And I think there are not many who have that character to earn that trust and respect that they can follow these days. Maybe I've got it wrong, but that's how it seems to me.
Well, it is. What happens is that it becomes real easy, and it's gratifying when you see fighters and you see corners and trainers who you've worked with since way back when, that still have the same kind of respect for you and still give you the same, and and still feel the same comfort. It's you get a lot of gratification from that. But then you also know that I'm doing something right, but I know myself that it's right because it's so damn easy to do. It's not hard at all, and the results. I've had a lot of announcers, that come up to me and say, "All right, Burt, we're dependent on you tonight. We're dependent on you tonight." And I'm looking and dependent on what? I'm dependent on you to get them where they get out there and they just fight their butts off and, just tear each other's heads off. And I know that's what they want. But I also know that I have to put these young men, and they're all kids. They're all kids to me. I'm always the oldest person in the building. And I gotta put, listen, man, this is no longer your profession. This is a lifestyle, and a lifestyle because lifestyles last longer than professions.
Wow.
Because as long as it's your lifestyle, you're going to sit in a chair and still might be able to work out and still might think you want to do it, but your lifestyle is going to put it where you're just going to be able to sit and watch it. So I'm going to teach you how to make it that, and how to make the best of this lifestyle that's going to stay with you when the little bit of the profession kind of hides away and gets out of the way of everything, But it's good and it's fun, and I'm having a good time, and I'm happy to see. Where are you guys situated right now?
Cambridge.
Yeah, in the UK.
Okay, and I see how it has, MMA and combat sports has blossomed. I saw it go from a caterpillar to a butterfly. That's how it is, right? It's a caterpillar first, then a butterfly. I've seen it. I've seen the little legs on it, how it's gotten big, and how it is massive right now. And that's a word I learned from some of my friends in the UK. It is massive, and it's just continuing to grow and grow and grow with so many various opportunities. Here it is, you and your son sitting on a podcast. It's a part of the world we live in today, and the things that we can enjoy of today, and we need to take advantage of it. But there's endless possibilities with a lot of legs going on, baby. Yeah.
There's something I really appreciated about you when I met you for the first time. Because you obviously, after sitting next to my mum, you said that if your son and a friend want to come to the fights, I'll provide a couple of tickets. And we emailed, we came to the hotel, and when we arrived, you were escorting the fighters through the lobby into the bus. And I walked over, said, "Hey, Burt, I'm Andrew Kirk." You sat next to my mum, Daphne, on the flight, and you checked that we got the tickets, and you said, "Look, I'll find you at the arena. I'll come and see you at some point." And I was like, I didn't know if you would come and see us. You didn't have to do that, but I think it was kind of halfway through the event, and you walked over. In the midst of everything, you walked over, you came to see us, and I was like, this guy didn't have to do this. He just gave us tickets, really good seats. Like, that's his job, if you like, is done. Like that, he doesn't need to do anything else to make this any more special for us. But you did take the time away from your hectic schedule, I'm sure, to come over and check that we were doing okay. Do we need anything? And I think that says a lot as an example of the kind of things you would be doing with fighters. But we meant nothing to you, really. We were fans, but yet you wanted to make sure we were cared for and looked after. And so I definitely appreciated that. And I think is a great example of the things that we're talking about. I mean, this is me and nobody at the time to you, but you wanted to make sure that we were doing good. I really appreciate it.
How long ago was that? How long ago was that?
Oh,
wow. 10 years ago, would it? Maybe?
Maybe 10 years ago?
It was quite some time ago.
Oof. Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while. Because I started in MMA legitimately. I started in 1999, but I legitimately got the ball rolling in 2000. And we are getting ready to go into 2022.
But what Andrew just said, I mean, really backs up what I said, to have somebody of character who can be a role model to the next generation is something. I mean, we're called generation to generation, so the importance of the next generation to us is important. And so for me, it isn't just you did these amazing things, but who you are has set things in motion for the next generation and probably the generation after. And there are no words really to stress where I'm concerned the importance of that. And, I'm thankful you're good at your job. I mean, I'm thankful you do all this stuff in cages, which when I talked to you, I thought you put them in a thing and locked the door and went away and leave them. But I mean,
putting out chairs at events.
And
just
put chairs out. But I know a bit better now. And I remember saying to you on the plane, something about what you did. And you turned to me and you said, I don't think you'd like it. And I thought, well, how does he know about me? But
I did.
Yeah,
I don't know if that might be a good conversation. You might not like that conversation.
Yeah, well, we had a good conversation.
I was just trying to get used to it because there was a big transition from boxing to MMA. Big transition. The combat sports, the use of all the arms and the hands and the legs, and there was a big transition. And a couple of times, I stood back and I was like, oh, whoa, shook my head a little bit, but I got through it. And every year since, you never have seen it all. Every time you say, wow, I've seen it all. Nope. It gets better. It gets different. Sometimes it's a bit unfortunate, some of the injuries. But man, the sport and the opportunities that it offers, and we right now are in the world is in such a state right now with so many things going on, but there's just as many good things going on as there are bad things. So many good opportunities. I'm sure sitting on that plane 10 years ago, this was probably the last thing you thought would ever happen. Okay, you and your son sitting on a podcast, and enjoying it, But we're in the middle of. You opened up with something that's going on in our world, and we've all been have gone through a lot over the last 2 years. Can't believe it's been almost 2 years, but it's been that long. But we've managed to trek through it, and my business now is starting to grow a little better. It's trying to get to a better place. You know, people are coming to events, and you know, there's a lot of restrictions, but it's good. It's good. I you know, of all the things that I've done in the past 3 or 4 months, because of the condition that we're in, the worst thing that's happened to me was the weather. I got stuck in Chicago almost 2 days this past weekend because of the rain. Sleeping in the airport. Man, that's the worst. That's worse than flying. Okay, that is the worst. You know, and when they stop the planes from going, and it's a force majeure or an act of God, they don't pay for hotels. They tell you wait until we fix it. Oh man, that was the worst thing that's happened to me in the last 2 years. But if that's all I got, I'm good.
Maybe as we come towards the end, we do things, and there's a price personally for doing the things we do. And before we started recording, you were talking about how you've got this fear of flying. And maybe people don't know that. It's not a fear, it's a phobia. Yes. And people don't know that. But sometimes, and we have issues. I've got a health condition which can affect me when I'm flying, but yet I fly 6 months of the year, and you just have to deal with it. Can you maybe just talk a bit about why do you do what you do, knowing that in doing it, you have to face this phobia all the time? What is it that pushes you to keep going and facing that fear?
Well, without sounding cliche, you know, like a cliche, I absolutely love what I do. I like the opportunities I get from it, the people that I meet from it, the positions that I'm put in place that manifest as you go along, you know, and I keep meeting people like, you know, Daphne and yourself, you know, and all those things are gratifying. And every time you do that, it motivates you to keep going and to keep on and to keep going. And, you know, getting on the plane, I lose focus of that because I so enjoy what I do. And I've become fairly good at it.
Yes.
So you know, it's very easy, and it's gratifying, because when I go to an event, I know why I'm going, and I know that when I get there, nobody's going to get in my way to do what I do, and I'm going to get that job done. And when I leave, people are going to be happier for it because I was there. So it takes that out of it.
It's passion. If you're passionate about something, it drives you. Well, before we finish, I have to tell you another funny story about our encounter on the plane. So I get off the plane and I call Andrew to say, this man says you all know who he is, right? And Andrew is absolutely horrified.
Yeah, sorry, that came across a bit funny. Like, not like Burt was going, "Your son will know who I am," but no, you said to Burt, "Hey, will my son know who you are?" And you said to her, "If he's been following the sport for a while, then he will probably know who I am."
Yeah, you didn't push it, and I actually had to get you to write your name down because it meant nothing to me. And I thought I could get. I said, "Can you just write your name on here?" And very graciously, you wrote it. Anyway, so I get off the plane, and I call Andrew, and I said, "You know this person," and of course, Andrew is then horrified at my absolutely ignorance of sitting next to you. But then he said, "Well, what do you talk about?" So I said, "Well, I don't know. I ended up talking about passing on to the next generation, as I always do." He said, "You did what?"
About the book or something you had, writing.
Yeah. And I said to him, whatever he's got, make sure it's passed on to the next generation. So Andrew says to me, do you realise what he did? So I said, no. He said, well, he gets people fighting. I said, what? I just told him to pass fighting on to the next generation. So the conversation might have gone a bit differently, but if I'd known, I'd probably sat there saying to you, "Don't pass it on to the next generation."
But you explained it in the form of documenting and writing things and passing it on, and a couple of times in my head I'm saying now, I really haven't explained to her what I did, and she's telling me to tell this guy to go knock this other guy's teeth out and pass that on to somebody else, okay? And pass that on. But you know what? It didn't make a lot of sense at the time, so I didn't say it, And your mom was such a nice. The last thing I wanted to do was to have your mom sit next to me, and I tell her that I work with people that pop people's heads off for a living, and she had to sit next to me for the next 3 hours. So I wasn't going to do that. So I was as easy with it as I could be, without, and she kept pushing, not pushing, but she kept reiterating how important it was to communicate, pass things on.
So is your life story written?
Not yet. But it's in the work. If you got some suggestions, but it's in the work. I just started working with someone over the last 3 years that's documenting and putting some things down. This last year slowed it down, but I would love to, hey, I'm 72 years old. Got a birthday coming up. I'll be 73 my next birthday. It's time for me to put something on a piece of paper up under something over here so that one day one of my great-grandkids can be in here and fumbling around and say, oh, look at this stuff Pop wrote. What is this? I'm definitely looking forward to doing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, my final words to you are this. I can promise you, Burt, a year from now at least, I'll be contacting you to find out if that book is being written.
She'll hold you accountable. Be careful.
Because, like you say, your children, your children's children deserve to read your heritage. It is amazing. It is their legacy. It is their right almost to be able to hold that in their hand, that this was your life, because I honour your life. I honour your character. I honour who you are. I will reconsider what you do, but hey, I'll just focus on that. So, I want my closing remarks to be to you, but I'm so thankful for that encounter, and I do honour highly the man that you are, and it will go in my calendar. That email will be coming your way.
Yeah, you can have this book written for your kids, your grandkids, and the rest of the world can just enjoy it.
Yeah,
I absolutely know that you will make that happen, because 10 or so years later, we're sitting here, okay, and we never lost contact. Yep. And the minute he communicated, I automatically knew what it was, so I can bet on that happening. And when you're ready, I'm ready.
We will do it. And
but thank you so much. I know you are a busy person. I appreciate that you're able to come and share some of your story with us. And we'll be reaching out again, I'm sure, and we'd love to dive into some more elements of your story if you come back. So
and until the next plane ride.
Until the next plane, I love social media. Anyone can always contact me on social media, and if I may say something, that right now I have a podcast myself.
All right.
That is on MMA Junkie. And it's called Legends to Legends, and it's where I sit and I talk with true legends of the sport. And it's not an interview, it's chatter. It's me sitting and talking real life situations. And the one that's out right now is with George St. Pierre. And they dropped it down yesterday, and it's on MMA Junkie, and it's called Legends to Legend. That's a dirty little plug, but I want everybody to see it.
I was actually meant to ask you for all this information at the start, but we jumped right in. So I will take all of those links and I will put them in the description box. So for anyone listening, all your information, your podcast, all that stuff will be in the box ready for people to go and check out. I've got one
question before you ring up. I mean, you never invited me onto your podcast.
Yeah, what about this legend, right?
What about me?
Just up to number 5. When I get up to 7 and 8, I'll give you a call. I'm just figuring it out. But man, am I having a good time.
Yeah, we are too. But
legends are legends.
Thank you so much, Burt. Thank you.
The Babysitter to the Stars. Yes, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for keeping me in your thoughts and your prayers, Daphne. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If it inspired you, please rate us and subscribe on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or another podcast platform.